The red rings of doom. It means your Xbox is fried.
Now what's being called one of the largest digital data breaches in history.
I was mad as
This is perfect Walmart advertising for you.
One Xbox has been sent back 3 times.
You're gonna need some towels for this.
We'll do it live!
So I just start smashing things. My TV, my Xbox, my meat.
Of all the histories, world history, pizza history, my search history, video game history is undoubtedly the ugliest, as battles were fought on playgrounds instead of trenches, in basements over bunkers, and online instead of on horseback. I can mend a mere flesh wound, but words? Words last a lifetime.
I'm not a doo-doo head.
And it's a gruesome virtual world, populated by fanatical fanboys preaching about the supremacy of their piece of plastic over your piece of plastic with the fervor or intelligence of a religious fundamentalist. Jesus did in fact walk on water so that my red-ringed Xbox doesn't have to. It's science, and these console wars have been waged since the beginning of time itself. From the gruesome Sega vs. Nintendo skirmishes to the puke-soaked battlefield of the Virtual Boy versus the Oculus. And gaming history is packed with fantastic stories, compelling character arcs, and unforgettable moments of betrayal, redemption, and stupidity. And like all war, the console wars reveal the duality of man, our capacity for great good and for great evil, because a beast and a saint exist within each and every one of us, myself included, and the difference rests on a razor's edge, as the desire to do good can easily be corrupted, as all it takes is one small push.
What the fuck, dude?
Now you can buy a PlayStation. But of all the console wars, none has been more memorable, iconic, or important as the 7th generation skirmishes, specifically the Xbox 360 versus the PlayStation 3. Nerd! Sony versus Microsoft, two titans of industry duking it out for technological supremacy, while Nintendo went off and did Nintendo things, i.e. being weird, like for the last time, get the fuck off my lawn. And these battles led to the rise of the Xbox kingdom and the consolidation of the Sony empire, taking Microsoft's market share from this to this, despite many trials and tribulations, the Red Plague, the Great 08 shortages, and the gruesome global TV genocide. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and so to go forward, we must first go back to a simpler time, a nobler time, when the internet was young and mankind's reign so very old, before the rise of the machines and the enslavement of humanity. And that year is 2005, which means it's time for rewind time. Where am I?
You're on my fucking lawn for the last goddamn time.
The year is 2005. SpongeBob is still good, Brett Favre is still a meat packer, and Sony just conquered the gaming world with the PlayStation 2, the best-selling console of all time, with bangers like Shadow of Colossus, Resident Evil 4, and Mr. Mosquito, sucking gamers' wallets dry by allowing them to suck boobies for the first and last time. A modern tragedy. Meanwhile, Microsoft attempted to enter the arena with their original Xbox, utilizing the deep pockets of Microsoft to get big stars like The Rock, Bill Gates, and off-brand Mario.
Well, I would think that...
It doesn't matter what you think, Bill.
God, what a dick.
But despite this star power, the Xbox emerged with a whimper rather than a bang, selling a measly 24 million units. Now, most companies would have been discouraged, put their little tail between their legs, and went off to create moon shoes. But Bill Gates has deep pockets, that Microsoft Office type money, gangster shit. And so Xbox as a brand was far from done. They didn't hear no bell, and so on May 12th, 2005, Microsoft sought out the most influential media brand on the planet, MTV.
I'm Adam, I'm 24, and I won't even notice if this girl has a good personality, because I'm going to be staring at her boobs.
I'm Travis, I'm 25, and I'm a dance instructor, and I'm going to teach this girl how to mambo my jitterbug.
What's up? I'm Ralph, and I like feet. Like a lot. Like, it's a problem.
So MTV held an event for Microsoft's brand new console, and the show was magical, being hosted by a real-life hobbit, Elijah Wood, to really showcase their next-gen console's size and power. It would be called the Xbox 360, named for Microsoft's love of red circles, but we'll get to that later. The showcase focused more on pageantry than the actual hardware, which is a brilliant strategy. I don't know what 179 G-flops means, and I don't wanna know. Ignorance is bliss. Just show me some murder. Thank you. And with that, the Xbox 360 hype train had officially left the station. Lil Jon likes it, so you know I'm buying it. Choo choo. Meanwhile, over at E3 2006, the much anticipated PlayStation 3 showcase would begin. Sony was riding high off their back-to-back smash hits with the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, revolutionizing the game literally with CDs instead of those pesky, breath-stealing cartridges. And Sony was feeling good. Maybe too good, because they would come out on the E3 stage with all eyes on them and the bright light shining and shock everyone with a most dreadful of decisions.
And the 60-gigabyte PlayStation 3 for $599 US dollars, $659 Canadian.
Holy shit, dude. $5.99? No, he said $500. Well, time to buy a Wii.
In a shocking twist of events, Sony announced a staggering opening price for the PlayStation 3 of $600, nearly twice the amount of the Xbox, and like 6 times more than whatever Sega was doing. And to make matters worse, they never justified the price tag, but rather unjustified it with high school PowerPoint presentations talking about numbers and stuff. Just show me some games. Like, if you're gonna ask double the industry standard, you better showcase me some masterpieces of game design with cool mechanics like mining Bitcoin or finding me some friends. But instead, Sony came out and dropped a historically inaccurate turd like Genji Day of the Blade,
which is based on Japanese history. The stages of the game will also be based on famous battles which actually took place in ancient Japan. So here's this giant enemy crab.
Like, I had no idea ancient Japanese samurai battled giant crabs. It really gives you a lot of perspective and appreciation for how simple modern times are. Rather than fighting a giant crab, I can just buy a king crab. It really makes you think about how good we have it. And I think since the Cambodian crab wars of 1888, the giant crab problem has mostly been eradicated.
You're gonna be executed by the crab court.
That's gonna cost me like a whole new PS3.
While the Xbox focused on creating a spectacle as fuel for their hype train, the PlayStation focused on hardware, a rookie mistake, talking about their Blu-ray player, their girthy gigabytes, and their many USB ports, because Lord knows if gamers love one thing, it's filling up ports. But your average Joe in 2005 could hardly figure out a memory card, let alone fathom the inner workings of a USB. And so the entire presentation came up as arrogant, cringy and disconnected. It was like Sony didn't understand their core audience at all. Gamers. We want big explosions, big monsters, and big anime boobies. Simple pleasures. Like, what's the point of having 4 $100 USB ports when I can't see my TV anyways because Grandpa threw the Wii controller into it again?
I'm putting you in a home.
However, Sony's expensive, arrogant tech decisions cut deeper as the PlayStation at launch was unfamiliar and tedious for developers, as the console utilized state-of-the-art cell processor technology that wasn't solely meant for game development but medical software and more. I thought I was playing Surgeon Simulator 2, but it turns out that was just my hand. Sony was so confident in their market share that they expected developers to bend the knee to their console kingdom and pledge fealty, offering up their crops, peasants, and exclusives regardless of if they wanted to or not, forcing their feeble subjects to develop on whatever wacky or difficult piece of technology Sony desired. It could be a toaster, a fridge, or even a shitty MacBook Pro lacking even a single USB port. Horrifying. They had truly become the dark, girthy lords, and so as a result, third-party developers fled the PlayStation kingdom and developed their games for Xbox first, and then ported them to PlayStation second, resulting in superior performance on Microsoft's console, meaning Sony had effectively created the perfect storm of shittiness with a console that was too expensive, too complicated, and too historically accurate. The 3 big no-nos of gaming. And I have to assume that Sony decided life on top was just too boring, too easy. They were back-to-back console champions and wanted to shake things up, and I get it. Life without challenges or brick walls is just meaningless. It's lonely at the top, and I'm freezing, but thank God I have this overheating Xbox to keep me warm, because the war has officially started as Microsoft unleashed their green blitzkrieg upon Sony's lands with lightning speed as the Xbox 360 launched in 2005. Nearly an entire year before the PlayStation 3, leaving Sony completely defenseless. It's like Germany invading Poland with tanks as the Polish fight back with their pathetic, organic horses. It's just not a fair fight, and tanks can cause more than a mere flesh one.
Well, at least I didn't get called a doo-doo head.
And now the race was on, as Sony desperately needed to convince the people that their $600 price point was worth it. But how do you do that? Well, being the dark corporate overlord, Sony naturally tried using dark magic, otherwise known as advertisements. Sell the people something they don't need for more than they can afford through psychological manipulation. It's the American dream, and so the brilliant mad lads over at Sony HQ got together and thought long and thought hard about how best to portray their brand to parents across the globe as the best, most futuristic, and sexy console for their children to get addicted to. And in a stroke of pure brilliance, Sony decided to launch one of the most bizarre marketing campaigns of all time. Weirder than the hot KFC guy, cringier than Pepsi, and more offensive than everything Gillette has ever done. It featured 3 main commercials or snuff films. The first, some exploding eggs that turn into crows. Second, a self-solving Rubik's Cube that also explodes. And third, an annoying, overly emotional baby that hopefully also explodes. Let's take a look.
Well, I
That's enough anime for today. And while Sony was weirding everyone out, Xbox was busy creating perhaps the two greatest video game commercials of all, Gears of War and Halo. Both commercials featured heartbreaking scores by Chopin and Gary Jules, the two greatest rappers of our generation. And you can't see that Gears of War commercial and not feel compelled to buy an Xbox 360, as tiers equal dollars. It's marketing 101, a 1-to-1 ratio, $1 for every tier, Bill Gates' favorite drink. Salty. And so by year's end of 2007, Xbox had nearly doubled the sales of PlayStation, which was held back by poor network capabilities, an ugly PlayStation Store, and questionable launch exclusives. Like, where the fuck is Mr. Mosquito 2 and the next-gen boobies?
Disappointed!
And this led to Xbox coming hot out of the gates, and it appears right now as if Xbox is running away with the war. But like any great story or any great battle, we need a twist. A circle, if you will, and just as Xbox was about to deliver the coup de grace, a fell omen appeared upon the wind, a black crow bearing a strange emblem on its chest, carrying ill news from those who thrive off ill news, the parasites of modern man, the mainstream media.
The red rings of doom.
Microsoft is facing a potentially huge possible class action lawsuit.
Some faulty Xbox 360s are literally melting down while running certain games.
He specified the cause, but users say the console's cooling system too. Red rings of doom.
Slower the more you use it. That's
Means
what
your
I've
Xbox
noticed.
is fried.
You're gonna need some towels.
Silence!
You're gonna need some towels.
I was getting sick just listening to that. And speaking of cancer, your Xbox may have it. It's called the Red Ring of Death.
Slaying Xbox 360s across the globe with the efficiency of the Black Plague, as this mysterious hardware malfunction marked every console for death. A red plague. Don't get too close, little Timmy, you might catch it. If you owned an Xbox 360, it wasn't a question of if your console would fail, but rather when. And the anticipation was not only killing consoles, but it was killing me. Thank God. Hey, put in another quarter. I'm going PlayStation this time. The Red Ring of Death is perhaps the most infamous hardware issue in gaming history, like the assassination of Caesar, the Battle of Waterloo, or the King Crab's Great Betrayal. Everyone knows about it. What initially appeared to be a normal number of malfunctioning systems quickly turned into an absolute torrent of failures, and as more players reported the issues, more media outlets picked up on it, and as more media outlets picked up on it, more players started noticing issues. The classic placebo snowball effect, and this snowball, or rather death ball, is rolling straight from Microsoft headquarters, clocking in at about 100 miles per hour, 800 gigapounds, and $1.1 billion. And oh my God, it's coming right for us.
Sony!
And so with media scrutiny mounting, many an eyeball began to laser in on Bill Gates' wallet, causing it to profusely sweat, and this left Microsoft with a very tough decision. Take the money and slink out of the gaming industry forever, disgraced, back to their offices focused on Microsoft Office, the Ouya strategy, or pony up and pay up. And Microsoft did the unthinkable for a modern AAA gaming company. They put the players first. Microsoft heard the pleas of their dying peasants and guaranteed full warranties for all Xboxes for 3 years, shipping included, and shipping alone costed them around $200 million, because apparently horses are more expensive than tanks. And so in total, the Red Ring of Death was about a $1.1 billion problem for Microsoft. Ouch. Now for many companies, this is a death sentence, the final hammer thrust, the last Chapter 11. But for Microsoft, that's like a whole day's worth of revenue, a bloody tragedy. So if your Xbox is broken, as it inevitably will be, send it on in and we'll get you straightened out. And this is a great lesson in saving one's brand. This could easily have spelled the very end of the Xbox as we know it, a relic of a bygone era, a legend living only upon the wind, crowning Sony as the unchecked kings of the console kingdom, free to do what they will with their subjugated subjects without any competition to keep them in check, swinging their price-gouging sword cocks at everyone and everything in sight. Peasants, plebs, and filthy casuals, oh my. And this is literally how Genghis Khan happened, and that guy was a dick. What a dick. And so Microsoft protected console gaming for all of us by keeping Sony in check, and in the process saved Microsoft's reputation amongst gamers, a shield for themselves and my wallet. However, the damage was still done in many ways, as this faux pas distracted Microsoft. It took their eye off the green prize and on to the red problem, as they had to pour tons of time, energy, and money into solving this puzzle. It moved their lidless, all-seeing eye away from the content and onto their own internal issues, allowing Sony to sneak up and begin taking ground in the war for the youth of America, luring them in with their new exclusives, trapping them in their USB ports, and shackling them with console mortgages, like I'm signing my soul away in blood red ink to afford this new PlayStation, so it better be goddamn worth it.
Sony! The Red Ring of Death bought Sony important time to focus on the important stuff. And it's not ruining childhoods, it's actually saving childhoods, because they began to work with developers to create fantastic exclusives like Ratchet & Clank, Uncharted, Super Rub-a-Dub, the classics. As with time, developers became much more comfortable with the PlayStation 3's operating system, but the Xbox still had an ace up their sleeve, a promise to placate gamers amidst the Red Plague ravaging the countryside. A particular hot, sexy single exclusive to your area right now at your local GameStop for the low, low price of your romantic life. It's the king of futuristic first-person shooters, the chief of split screen, the master of multiplayer, Halo 3. You shut the fuck up, I'm trying to shit. The year is 2007 and Halo 3 has just launched to worldwide acclaim, instantly becoming a classic. If you wanted to play Halo, you had to be on Xbox. Throw that PC away, fuck school, and screw IRL friends, because I've got virtual friends to kill. And as we move through the holiday season into 2008, the PlayStation finally began to update their software, creating a trophy system, updating online capabilities, and overhauling the user interface. And after the disastrous 2006 E3 showcase, Sony clearly learned their lesson, pivoting away from showcasing their hardware and towards their exclusives: God of War 3, Metal Gear 4, Uncharted, and more. Now, none of these are quite the caliber of Halo 3 in terms of sales. I mean, Halo 3 sold more games than every Final Fantasy combined, but the sheer volume of desirable exclusives was really beginning to mount up. Gamers' wallets began salivating. I mean, just look at those abs. I'll never have them, so might as well let out my self-loathing rage through the God of War. Now I feel much better, but for all the fantastic fantasy of the Greek universe, Xbox had yet another ace in the hole. Final Fantasy XIII would be coming to the Xbox and no longer be a PlayStation exclusive. The anime girls had betrayed Sony, another haymaker from Xbox sending PlayStation reeling into the ropes, and with this devastating blow, PlayStation seemed to be on their last legs, quivering, barely able to support themselves through their malnourished sales, and by the end of 2008, Xbox was sitting at about 28 million sales as compared to Sony's 21 million. That's 7 million more units sold, or 7 million more kids that banged your mom, the white ring of death.
Guys, you're making me uncomfortable.
Thus far, it's been a rough road for the PlayStation. Bad marketing campaigns, poor understanding of their core audience, and a subpar relationship with developers. But 2009? 2009 was Sony's year, their final rebuke as the waves of Xbox normies attempted to push them off the cliff, forever to be relegated to console purgatory with the likes of Sega, Atari, and my throw-up-filled Oculus. But Sony is not so easily undone. With the release of exclusives like Killzone 2, Demon's Souls, and more, Sony had seriously begun to build a worthwhile library of exclusives. Xbox went for haymakers, while PlayStation played it slow, tired their opponents out with small jabs, little kicks, bob and weave, dodge, dip, dive, and dodge, because that Xbox is coming right for you. However, Microsoft and Sony weren't content with their current measly market share. They had their eyes set on greener pastures. Like the Vikings of old, they desired more amidst their fighting, and they found a brief respite and looked across the street at Nintendo, sitting there playing all by themselves like a weirdo, ripe for the plucking, and they said,
"Let's go bully that kid. Ow. You're the worst."
So Sony and Xbox premiered their would-be competitors to the Wii, the PlayStation Move, and the Xbox Kinect, both targeting the motion control phenomenon in very different ways. The PlayStation Move utilized a wand like the Wii controller. The hope was to create a new favorite toy for gamers by modeling it after their mom's favorite toy, while the Xbox focused on a camera that claimed to turn your entire body into a controller, which frankly sounds incredibly uncomfortable.
I'm free to play and to interact and feel the magic of my environment.
Help. Both hope to plant their flags on Nintendo's soil and gather up resources for the upcoming battle. However, the PlayStation Move never really gained any traction, as everyone's TV was already smashed, but the Kinect actually was a major financial success. In the short term, it sold well, but it was a step forward down a path that actually just led to a giant gaping hole in the ground, as the Kinect signaled to Microsoft's core audience that the brand was beginning to shift focus away from revolutionary shooter exclusives and more towards family-friendly content to reach a broader audience and pump those sales numbers up, because old Billy still wants blood for the Red Ring of Death, and it shows. Like, please stop looking at me like that, you're making me uncomfortable. And so as the Xbox fumbled with their nuts in front of a camera, Sony continued making moves, and not PlayStation moves, because it's 2009 and they unveiled their completely revolutionized PlayStation. A slimmer and, more importantly, cheaper model, cutting the literal and figurative fat off the PlayStation. And like any great new product, they wanted the world to know about it. So the marketing team at Sony got together and discussed how best to create interest in their fat-shamed PlayStation. "Creepy babies," shouted intern number 1. "No." "Crows," shouted the creepy old man in the corner. "Definitely not." And from this historically accurate meeting, Sony came up with not only one of the greatest advertisements of all time, time, but perhaps one of the greatest marketing campaigns, period. The Kevin Butler ads, featuring a man, a real human being with charisma stats, speech abilities, and funny dialogue options.
It's why we made the PlayStation Move. So every person on this great spinning marble will be able to get a taste of the PS3 sugar.
Tastes like GameStop and dick.
This marketing strategy single-handedly transformed PlayStation's image, going from disturbing to downright hilarious. These commercials are everything you want in an advertisement: engaging, clear, concise, and powerful. They really make you want to buy a PlayStation. It's so sleek and so cheap. Like, now I can actually afford bread, which made the brand cool again, and giving the overheating Xbox 360 cool was always a good thing. But Sony wasn't done there. They kept jabbing, kept kicking, and even delivered a few uppercuts themselves with must-plays like Uncharted 2, Ratchet & Clank, and 50 Cent Blood and Sand, because I always wanted to know what it was like to go bankrupt, and now I can, because I've bought multiple PlayStation 3s and way too much bread.
Why did I buy all this bread?
So the line was being breached. Microsoft desperately tried countering with Halo 3 ODST and exposed children to dangerous zoo animals. Not cool. Before revealing their brand new Xbox 360S, which finally is totally free of that red ring STD, but you still might want to get yourself checked out. And at this point, PlayStation is sitting at about 48 million sales, while Xbox is at 51 million.
That's 3 million. 4 less than 7, that's math.
But just as Sony began to inch closer towards Microsoft's bum disaster strikes. PlayStation Network is hacked by an anonymous group of hackers called Anonymous, and potentially millions of users' sensitive data is leaked. Now, this is standard business practice today, but back in 2011, it was a big deal. Credit cards leaked, social security numbers stolen, shitty email addresses spammed. Like, I don't know who loves to spooges, but this email is just rude and way too accurate.
Fuck no.
And as a result, Sony said, "Shut it down, boys," as the masked invaders were over the castle walls, nay, in the keep, and now nobody feels safe. The women, the children, not even the gallant knights in armor can stand up to this modern sabotage. Off with ye fell demon! The PlayStation hack resulted in 23 days without PlayStation Network. That's 23 days without online gaming and 23 days of forced dopamine fasting. It's a gamer's version of Lent, and it showed. People were reeling from the deprivation, starved for communication, lacking love, and any meaningful conversation. Sony apologized, but the damage was done. Why should I buy and play games on a system that's actively going to dox me? That doesn't sound like fun, and as we've established, doors are very expensive.
Why did I buy that bread?
So with Sony's reputation taking a blow, Xbox continued full steam ahead with their Kinect strategy, disconnecting them further from their core audience as the console continued to sell well, and so much of their 2011 showcase once again featured mostly filthy casual games. Star Wars on the Kinect, dancing on the Kinect, Grandpa on the Kinect, and thank God, because we had to take away the weed to keep our house safe. Everything is broken. Windows, doors, bread. The only thing that isn't broken is the least valuable item, Grandpa himself. Meanwhile, Sony began patching up their network and their image with lots of numbers, releasing Uncharted 3, Infamous 2, Killzone 3, and holy shit, MLB 11 The Show? We haven't had a new MLB game since like 10. But despite the hacking, by year's end of 2011, the exclusives proved powerful enough to edge Sony within 1 million units sold. The race was on. It's been a long war, a marathon, many exclusives, many dramas, ups and downs, twists and turns, and yet here we are, closing in on the finish line, the final sprint, the 100-yard dash, inches apart, who will win? Both parties are exhausted and just want it to all be over with, and Sony, in the final meters, whips out their last trick, the killing blow, the coup de grace, the content trip to forever leave Xbox 360 in the dust, and it was called The Last of Us.
Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on.
I thought she was a zombie. And so behind the power of The Last of Us and the new PlayStation Slim, when all was said and done, the PlayStation narrowly edged out the Xbox 360 in sales with 87 million units as opposed to 86 million. A victory for Sony, technically, but when considering the gap between the previous generations, this is more like Persia defeating the 300 Spartans. You won, but it took you 3 million soldiers, and this war led to Xbox becoming a true contender in the space. But in the end, both these heroes and their antagonists made each other stronger, revealing each other's weaknesses in the process and forcing the competition to new heights. The beauty of the free market. And as we look back on the smoke-ridden battlefield with dead exclusives everywhere and many a fallen fanboy, the real winner of the 7th generation was the Nintendo Wii, with over 100 million units sold, proving once again that Grandpa Gaming is best.
Oh, my back! Pathetic.
That's the video. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment and a like so the algorithm shows it to more people. And as always, shout out to the patrons. You guys are the lifeblood of this operation. Wouldn't be possible without ya. See ya, nerds.